Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another movie review. Dare I say, possibly the most exciting, high octane racing film this year. I have a whole panel of guests here to do this non spoiler review, and we're talking about F1 the movie, starring, of course, Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, Javier Bardem, and a slew of other amazing actors and actresses. But this is directed by the amazing Joseph Krasinski. So if you've seen Top Gun Maverick, you know what he's capable of. But this was on a whole different level. But I'm going to go ahead and bring everybody in. What's going on, gentlemen?
What is going
How you
on?
doing? What's up?
So two of the people at the bottom, this is intentional, are car guys. They live and breathe this. Me and Mike, we spectators. Mike might be more on the spectrum than I am. But I'm gonna get this to the car guys. Did it give F1 racing justice? That's the first question I'm gonna ask. I'll let Jorge go up first.
No, I think if you're an F1 fan, this will check off all the boxes for you. One of the things that I forgot who I was talking to after the movie. So if you have like the F1 TV package, you can like choose different views and different camera angles and stuff to watch, like, you know, the qualifiers or even the races. This is probably the first movie that I've seen that has given you that same race feeling. And it's not just like a shaky cam type of feeling. So the way that they shot this was just incredible. Like, you truly felt how spectacular and how, you know, in a weird way, how dangerous, you know, this sport really is. But in terms of the authenticity of it, you know, I think they did so right by choosing to have Lewis Hamilton, you know, kind of jump in and help with the accuracy of it, because at the end of the day, this is probably the closest to, you know, I won't say perfect, but the closest experience you'll get to seeing an F1 movie actually play out how it should.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely agree with that. Devin, you got any thoughts on that?
Definitely, yeah. I definitely believe it lived up to its hype. It lived up to the quality that I would have wanted for an F1 movie because I love not only, of course, the camera work, but just even the internal stuff of just seeing like certain things in terms of like the meetings they had. And I think a lot of that, like I think this is going to appeal to even a lot of just casual fans that just know F1 from like Netflix's Drive to Survive. I think a lot of people are going to be able to like pull from that and it'll be able to pull them in even more because they're like, hey, I'm familiar with that from Drive to Survive. And they'll be able to see and it gives you a good idea of even the lives of how some of these F1 drivers work and seeing the team meetings and everything like that. So they really did do justice of how they approached this from camera work, from the action, from the internal meetings, even from some of the drama and strife amongst the team members and drivers. They did a really, really good job in capturing all of that and making this into what it was. So I'm very, very happy with how they portrayed it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. So for Mike, from a movie standpoint, I mean, does it stand up to the hype? I mean, you got to go to CinemaCon to see the first 20 minutes of the film. You
Yeah.
guys were like spewing like you never seen nothing like this before. And I agree. I've seen it now and it's insane. But as far as the movie, I mean, it's one thing to have great visuals, great aesthetic, and high octane, but you also have to round it out with characters. You also have to make it a well-rounded film that's rewatchable. You know, this is not like a short runtime. So from a movie standpoint and the aesthetic of how they executed it, what is your perspective on that, Mike?
Yeah, I would say in terms of racing films, like if you've seen Rush or or other films before, this to me is on the more entertaining side, and I think more rewatchable, and made me more as a fan of a fan of the sport, even though I'm aware of the sport, but I just more on the other aspects of it, the engineering side of it, the dynamics between owners and stuff, the racers themselves. Now we've seen this trope before with people like retire or returning veterans in the sport and rookies, and then clashing of that in any sport film, whether it's like football, basketball players, boxing, UFC, whatever that may be. But this was an entertaining film, and really, again, the cusp of that you had Brad Pitt and Damson Idris in this is like they're the both were amazing leads in this, not only just with their chemistry but just their personality. Like Brad Pitt had so much charisma in this movie that even then the whole time, like this movie is 2 hours 40 minutes, you're not bored. Like yet you're like, okay, yeah, I can tell this is kind of dragging on, but I'm not having a bad time. That makes sense. In terms of a cinematography perspective, again, this is adrenaline punching. Again, coming from director directed Top Gun Maverick. This was a canvas that he had put all full display, and again, it's a love letter to the sport of racing. And I think done in a interesting way where that it create also the atmosphere, even the audience, to people who were not technically racing fans and non racing fans, just a fan of cinema, right? That we all enjoyed this, collectively, because this was just a good story. And again, I felt that from a cinematography perspective, it was crystal clear. The racing, the camera angles, the sound editing, sound design, and sound mixing, and everything. You feel the adrenaline punching and everything when when accidents happen or and stuff. You feel the intensity of these races. But again, I think that I felt even in a 2 hour and 40-minute, they paced it very well, even though again it's not perfect. But to me, again, this was entertaining and it delivered what it promised.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. From a technical perspective, for me, it won me on every different level. I think that from an awards contention standpoint, cinematography, it may be up there to being a lock nomination. The score, the freaking score with this, that Hans Zimmer put his back into it. Like I really loved it. I realized in the very opening, I was like, man, this score sounds great. And they kept ramping it up. And they did do a good job with mixing. I agree with Mike on that. The sound mixing and the design of how all things are going around. Like, yeah, it was, from a technical perspective, a really amazingly well done film. Now, the thing that I was going to ask everybody, Nancy, because this may not be the same for everybody, I actually like the supporting cast. And to me, like in a movie like this, I knew that Damson and Brad were going to, they're going to put their all into it. And I think they have great chemistry. And I think I agree with Mike, like their charisma is like off the charts. It's just, you felt like both of them had a story to tell individually. I don't feel like any one character was just overshining another. I mean, of course it is Brad Pitt and Damson's movie, but I felt like certain other characters got moments. Certain other characters had time to be able to develop things. Like Damson's character, he had a mother, and there was a real interesting backstory there and a connection there with all the other characters that played into it. But then, with Javier Bardem's character, you can tell there's real history there with him and Brad Pitt. So it's like, for me, I did not anticipate liking the other characters. I just knew that this was going to be high octane. I knew it was going to be entertaining. Heck, they brought, if any of you guys know the show Killing Eve, they brought a character from that up here that I really love his work. But what did you guys think about the characters and then how they handled it in the story in the context of the amount of time they had?
Well, I mean, I didn't know that, Richmond's FC's therapist was also the mother of a race car driver. So I thought that was really nice by Apple, including Ted Lasso characters in here. Nah, just joking. But no, I thought the way that they were able to incorporate, and I think it was mentioned earlier, the way that they incorporate all the background parts of F1 into this really made you, I don't want to say like fall in love with this team, but like made you root for this team from every single character, from like the principal to like the chief engineers to, you can kind of go down the list, and it's, everyone kind of had their moments or their, kind of like their points where you kind of see their story develop, even those that didn't have a lot of speaking roles, you kind of get to know them just by kind of seeing them and seeing their reactions to certain things that are getting said, or even the way that they're acting. I thought they did a spectacular job. And I think something in terms of some of the background characters, which I think for me being like a huge F1 fan, the way that they incorporated real life F1 drivers and former principals and all that was phenomenal, because it wasn't like they were trying to make certain characters out of these F1 drivers. One of the big ones is you'll see Gunther, who used to be the former Haas guy, and that dude is just like, he's just soaking with like attitude, and or like he's just a cool dude. So I thought from that point of view, I really appreciate that, like seeing some of like my favorite drivers out there, like Fernando Alonso and all that. It was neat being able to see these people just being themselves while yet interacting with all these other actors. Which I think most movies, when you see certain like people show up, they kind of try taking on a different persona or something. And I felt all the real racers stuck to their persona, and all the actors kind of just blended in perfectly with them. So from my point of view, I thought character wise and actor wise, this was a home run for me.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah. You want to
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think they did a very good job with the supporting cast, because I liked with Damson Idris' character, you were able to see kind of how his personality was and how all the characters interacted with him and how that made up his character and his personality. And then on the other side with Brad Pitt's character, you were kind of able to see how he was and how he interacted with others and how that influenced them, and how that even drew people to him because of how he was and how he portrayed himself and how he carried himself as a person and as a driver. So I love how with you had it was like, the dynamic between those two in their environments, their differing environments, and who they had around them, and you were able to kind of create two very not too complex dynamics in their characters, but you were able to see the differences and how they were, and then able to kind of bring it all together in how they were kind of be able to, they did, one younger, one older, young lion, older lion going up against each other and trying to make things work. And so I really did like that portrayal and that dynamic between those two, um, from the supporting cast, that allowed that to really bloom out more and more as the film progressed. So I really did like that.
No, for sure. Mike?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the even though you have the two leads, Damson and Brad, having much charisma, you also have just personality amongst the entire team of the Apex team. Even and also other supporting characters like Javier Bardem, which again, anytime you see Javier Bardem again, he adds just another dimension to a cast or ensemble that he joins. And again, all these people have personality, and there's a lot of humor in this film, but not in a way where it feels like a comedy. Just people, going through these situations within racing, and that's realistic. Even from a business side, when foul play is involved, from an engineering side, when you might have someone that just might make a mistake, and everyone is all collaboratively trying to win this thing, right? It's not just about a racer, which usually in other movies, some of these characters will actually just be extras, and you have no sense of and understand their character, their backstory, whatever. But each person in the category in the Apex team have their own personality that adds to just the ensemble of this cast. So to me, like, even though you have standouts collaboratively, like you have entertaining characters throughout it, where it doesn't feel like I'm bored. I'm entertained with all these characters, and then when humor is brought into it, it's engaging. But it's like, if you're in racing, it's like, oh, that makes sense, that's funny, so it's again, it's realistic, and I feel like it feels organic and not in an authentic way in a sports film. But yeah, no, I felt like, to me, they established that really in the first 15 minutes, but then when you get introduced to Damson's character, and then you see the entire Apex, team and everything, and his mother, also his friend who knows trying to get him into more PR space and everything. Yeah, no, they add a good dynamic to all those characters. It was good balance.
Yeah, I do want to say something. I don't want this to sound rude, but there's going to be some people that's going to be making comparisons to this film to the last film that kind of came out, which was Gran Turismo. I really did enjoy Gran Turismo. I'll look at that movie anytime. And it's a real life story, but I feel like from a technical standpoint, this is a whole different level. And I don't want anybody confused that this film is comparable from a technical standpoint to Gran Turismo. From a technology standpoint, Gran Turismo is ahead of its curve. But when you talk about the practical effects, the things that they had to do, the locations they had to go to, and then the different sidebar things of the characters and their dynamics, it's very different. And so I want to state that openly. But I do think that there's lanes for all of it. I mean, there are great racing films over the years, and it's just, this is a whole different level. You're never going to see anything like this from an IMAX standpoint, from a racing standpoint. But I think that you're going to have a great time with this film. This is one of the best films this year to me. From a technical standpoint, it might be probably one of the most best technical films as well. But I want everybody to kind of give their closing thoughts and then closing ratings. And I guess if you have any negative outliers, you can bring it up. But let's go ahead and give it a rating for it.
That is that's a good one. I don't know rating wise. I didn't even think about Gran Turismo when I was looking at this, because I wouldn't even put it on, I wouldn't even put them on the same playing field. For me, rating wise, I mean, this is like a 9.5 for me. It was pretty. I'm trying to think of what I didn't like about this movie. Let's go with that. Let's go with that. Like, I'm trying to think what I didn't, and there was nothing. Like, soundtrack was good, car design was awesome, and like, here's where we can get like real technical. So the cars that they were racing on here weren't even F1 cars. They were F2 cars modified to look like F1 cars.
Wow.
So looking at it from that perspective, when you look at an F2 car, it looks radically different than an F1 car. So for them to just be able to do that aspect of it and make it still look functional and all that, from a shooting point of view, if I recall correctly, like, they created a new type of IMAX certified miniature camera for this film, where, I mean, just thinking about it from a technology point of view, like what they were able to accomplish in terms of being able to do all this in IMAX, and just having like, I think, you know what, I'm just gonna screw it. This is a 10 for me. The more I'm thinking about it, like, I can't think of something that I didn't like about this movie. The movie is long. It's like 2 hours, some minutes. But what I appreciated from it was it keeps you sucked in with the story. Like, the story is just, it's a very captivating story. And something that I enjoyed in all the scenes, and, every time they went from like race to race, is just kind of seeing who I can see in the background, like, like people that I, have seen on TV, almost week to week during the F1 race. And I think for me, even if you're not into cars or you're not into F1, this is a great like stepping stone to getting someone into that, because it's a great story, great cast. And I think what you said earlier, like the soundtrack and the score alone was phenomenal. Like, this is truly, I think Lewis Hamilton, one of his biggest things was he wanted this to be the most authentic racing movie ever made. And without a shadow of a doubt, I think this hits that bar none. Like, you can check that box off. It is as great as it can be. So yeah, for me, this is a 10 out of 10. Like, the more I'm thinking about it, the more there's absolutely nothing I can think wrong with this film.
I've never seen Jorge talk himself into a 10. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Devin, closing thoughts and rating.
I think I will give this a 9 out of 10. Definitely, it was way better. Than I think it definitely went above and beyond my expectations. Felt like a little bit. I mean, I felt like you got a bit of rush in there. I felt like it felt like old school Days of Thunder because it didn't feel like it tried to keep up with the times of being so modern and everything like that in terms of the dialogue. Of course, love the cinematography with the cameras and really enveloping you and seeing what it's like at the speed of an F1 car and what it's like. So I really enjoyed that. I think the only thing, and this is just the avid motorsports fan in me, I think the only thing I would have liked is to see, because we knew that they were constantly working on the car to try to make it better and everything like that. The only thing I would have liked to see is just like qualifying sessions.
Oh, yeah.
Just slight little clips of qualifying sessions to try to go along with the progression of them getting better as a team, getting better with the car and everything. I would have liked to have seen that in there because I think that would have added a little bit more to it and even add a little bit more dynamic and seeing the growth in Damson Idris' character as a person and as a driver, of course, and of course in Brad Pitt's character, and seeing how they interact and saying, "Oh yeah, I one upped you here," or "I one upped you there," and that type of thing. So that's something I really would have liked to have seen. But other than that, I mean, yeah, that was definitely one of the best racing films I've ever seen. So 9 out of 10.
Man, for him got to pull that nitpick out of there. You know they're doing their job in a 2 hour and 36-minute movie. Like, anyway, go ahead, Mike. What's your closing thoughts?
Yeah, closing thoughts. This is a very entertaining film. I think one of the best films of the year so far. Hopefully, box office as we get into the next two big heavy hitters in the next couple of weeks in July. Hopefully that again we have variety in the box office, and just I hope that this again brings different dynamic original films that can be major blockbusters and never bring people back to the theater. This is not a streaming service. I know, get your Apple TV, but no, go see in the theaters, an IMAX. This is in the full way that's intended on the big screen. I do give this a 9 out of 10. I enjoyed it. And again, I thought the performances Brad Pitt and Damson Idris was a very surprising duo, which I would love to see more of in other stories with them and everything. And yeah, I was very pleased with this pacing. 2 hours and 40 minutes or so, but I want to rewatch this film again. And normally I would not say that. Like, oh, I make a decision, I'm not watching this movie again. I'm gonna watch this movie again. But yeah, and hopefully you see its full authentic version, which is in the cinema and IMAX. So but yeah, 9 out of 10.
Yeah. When we first saw, I think the first teaser of this, I was like, man, this looks crazy. And it's from the director of Top Gun Maverick. So I was like, I mean, it's a day one. You have to see it just based off the director and the actors. But I never anticipated enjoying it to this level. And I think the one thing that we never talked about, and I can't speak for everybody else, but the second to third act, I was dealing with anxiety. Like I was like this at times. I was kind of like looking like this. I was like really in there.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of the Adobe. It's not just because we saw it in IMAX. It's the tension. They built tension based on how the races were moving. And that's just good storytelling and good framing and good pacing, because it's not as though we're watching the whole entire race, but every single moment, every single turn, every single small little detail about each character while they're in the seat or while they're outside of it, you're continuously feeling it. And I mean, for me, honestly, I don't really have any negatives. I try to nitpick. It's something they did at the very end. I was kind of like, I want a little bit more, but it's not merited for me to give it anything under a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10, to be honest. I really do think that this falls in line of Warfare, Sinners, as one of the best films this year. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's probably one of the best visual immersive experiences you're going to get this year. And I think it is going to be war stacked. I really do think it's going to be up to war contention. You know, we got, of course, Fantastic Four coming up. We've got Superman coming up. We've got, you know, Avatar coming up later on in December. There are going to be plenty of, right, there's going to be plenty of entertaining movies. But technical entertaining movies is a whole different level. And I think that this is there. We have found it. And so if you're debating whether or not to check this film out, it's a day one. You got to go and check it out. And I do not think you're going to be displeased. So we're going to go, guys. Thank you guys so much for, whoa, we lost Mike. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you guys later on. Go and check out these guys' respective channels. If you go into the bottom, look in the bottom left, you can see their social medias, except for Devin, because Devin is kind of trying to be secretive about his stuff. But we got a lot more content coming, a lot more reviews, discussions, and interviews, and some other festivals as well. So we'll talk to you guys a little bit later on. Thank you guys so much for watching. Go check out F1 Day 1, June 27th. Peace, guys.